Trapcode Particular is part of the Red Giant Trapcode suite we looked at in the last chapter. It allows us to create particle effects in both 2D and 3D space and is an industry standard in motion graphic design. While there is way too much content to cover in one movie, there is an entire course about working with Trapcode Particular available from author Chad Perkins. For now, let's take a basic tour of Trapcode. So Trapcode Particular is the first particle-based plugin we'll be covering in this chapter, and for good reason. It's one of the most used in motion graphic and broadcast design. To find out more information about Trapcode Particular, you can head to redgiant.com and go to the product section and download this as part of Trapcode Suite, or get Trapcode Particular as a standalone effect rather than have it as part of the Trapcode suite. Here on the product page, you'll also be able to download a free trial to follow along with this movie. And let's head into After Effects to take a look at the Chapter 2.2 composition that you can find in the Chapter 2 folder. And since Chad Perkins' release of an entire Trapcode Particular course, we're going to be looking at some of the new features in Trapcode that have been offered in the latest release of Trapcode Particular from Red Giant. So in my effects and presets, I've actually done a search for Particular, which I can find right here. And I'm going to take that and drag that onto the solid that's already included in this composition. Now right away something happens. You can see that a bunch of shapes are being emitted out from a point, and as I play back, after a certain period of time, they die. Now a great way to get control of this particle system is to play around with the velocity. So you can see here, if I take that velocity value and bring it all the way down to 0, now all these circles that are being born just stay fixed on a point and they eventually die. So besides having these particles being born on a point, we can change what they're being born on. So I'm just going to head up here and change this from point to box. Now let's make the box a little bit bigger. I want to make the box dimensions 400 by 400 by 400. And with this increase of size in box, more particles would help as well. So let's increase the particles per second being born to an amount of 2,000. And now you can see tons of particles being born on this bigger box. So although the Trapcode Particular effect is on a 2D layer, it will interact with After Effects' 3D cameras and lights. You can see I have a camera here in the scene, and I'm going to press the C key. You can see that I'm now orbiting around this particle system with ease. And I can have lights interact with that. I can also have these particles interact with other After Effects layers. Now, let's increase the velocity a little bit. When I increase the velocity away from its amount that I set to 0, you can see that these particles are starting to shoot outward from the box that they're being born on. The higher the amount, the more that these particles are going to be shot outward. And we can also play around with its life and death properties as well. There are also other physical forces that we can have interact with our particles as well. So as of the release of Trapcode Particular 2.5, there's also been a ton of new additions that now come with Particular that we should cover. So let me reset this effect. And again, we've got particles being born from a point and shooting outward because of the velocity. So you can see here, first of all, at the top, this item called particle behavior. So this is new. It's set to continuous right now. And we can actually change this to explosive. So rather than the particles be born continuously, they just explode outward and then die and fade away after 3 seconds. So to see this a bit better, I'm actually going to increase the particles per second all the way up to 30,000. And now we can see just a ton of particles exploding outward, and then boop, they die. So also let's increase the amount of time that they live for on screen. And we can do this under the particle section. So if we go to the particle section, I'm going to increase that lifespan to 10. So that explosion particle behavior is a nice new feature that can allow us to create fireworks or other particle elements such as fireworks extremely quickly. Another additional new feature is, so far, just to keep in mind, we've been working in, let's say, the traditional way that most people have worked with Particular. We've stayed within After Effects under effect controls and sort of gone through various sections. Well, just in this case, a couple sections, but we work in between these sections directly inside effect controls. Now, the new and even better way to work with particle systems is to go to the effects builder. So at the top of my effect, I'm actually going to click on the effect builder, and this is just a great way to visualize and have access to several different particle systems and presets. Right now I see the particle system that I loaded in from After Effects. But if I click on this little play button here on the left-hand side, we're going to have access to a ton of particle presets and are able to also visualize them in one place. Let's actually click on the smoke and fire category. And I'm going to click on the directional fire. And you can see that loads up here in the preview window, and I can see what that beautiful directional fire does. So right underneath the preview window, we can really see what the particle effect is made of. So let's now go back and close the smoke and fire category and take a look at some of these snow-based effects. So in here, I really like blowing snow. I'll hit the play button again just to preview that. And let's choose a different type of snow, maybe something a little bit larger. And I'm just going to click the play button to close out that preview section. But it's a really visual way to work and select some particle presets to begin with right away, which is just fantastic. On top of that, once you select a preset, we can continue to working the way we are right now. I can select any one of these elements that was used to make up this particle system, and you'll see that now some of its properties load up on here on the right-hand side that we can manipulate. So here we can see what it's sampling and the size of the particles. So let's make some changes. I'm going to scrub the value. And now we have these much bigger snowflakes that appear in the preview window. I'm going to press Command Z to undo that. And keep in mind that I have access to all of these particle behaviors, such as how they're fading in and how they're fading out and how they're rotating. I can even swap out what type of particle this preset is referencing. So instead of having snow, I could actually have dust and respond in the same way that you see this particle system. So the possibilities are somewhat limitless. Just keep in mind now that with the new version of Particular, we've got two ways that we can work. One is the traditional way of working with Particular, which you'll do directly in After Effects, or we can go for a much more visual experience and launching point here in the Effects Builder. So I can also go in here and see all the different types of emission options. So just keep in mind, we have an extensive library of different particles that we can reference beyond the basics of what you used to have, such as a spear. I mean, we could always choose to add a sprite or textured polygon, which gave us the option to choose our own layer inside of After Effects as a particle system. But now we've got all these presets like this maple leaf that can be referenced, and we can choose that easily to be referenced by this particle system. Let me just simply undo that like I can in After Effects by simply hitting Command Z or Control Z. So we have all of these items such as smoke and fire, and the list goes on and on. This is an extremely visual experience with all of your particle systems. We've got tons of presets in a library environment. Think of this effects builder as literally your particle animation assistant. Let's apply these snowflakes, and we can now see this load into After Effects. And now let's reset this effect and see a few more features and some of my favorites. So you can see here that I have a logo right now inside my composition. Just going to turn this on. And I'd like this logo to be referenced by Trapcode Particular. You can see it's slightly off angle, and that's because we changed the camera's orientation earlier in this exercise. So to correct this, let's select the camera and hit P for position. And we're going to right click on the word position or control click and just choose to reset the parameter. So now I have a logo and a particular system just behind it. Let's have these particles be emitted from this logo. So let's select the particular layer. And if we go to the emitter, let's choose, instead of a point, let's choose a layer. Now it's up to us to define the layer that we're going to use. And to do that, we need to go down to the layer emitter section. And let's reference the delivery Cine 2. To see this a bit more clearly, turn off the logo. And right now, if you scrub through your project, this might not look like much, but we're going to make a couple tweaks so we can see these particles even better. First off, let's make that velocity 0. And let's crank up the particles per second to, let's say, 5,000. So here it begins to emit particles and eventually draw out the logo, which is exactly what we want. Very cool. So let's now head down to the physics section and also introduce some gravity into this composition. Let's change the gravity to 10. And after taking a first glimpse, let's actually make that 30. So you can see the particles are starting to fall down. And the minute that we turn the logo on,
It's like they're falling from the surface of the logo. If we continue to explore the physics section, you're going to find other features which are just fantastic, such as the ability to add a floor where you can have particles bounce or stick to a floor. Overall, there's just a ton that you can do in Trapcode particular, and we're just covering the surface. For more information, check out Chad Perkins' extensive course on particular that you can find right here in the library.